So today here we're at a showcase on delivery of social protection entitlements in India, unpacking exclusion, grievance redress, and the relevance of citizen assistance mechanisms, which will be presented by Arshi from Dwara Research and Vijay from Gramvani. But just before I hand it over to both of them, I'd just like to go over a few ground rules. We are recording this session for the purpose of documentation and dissemination. So please do let us know by the chat if you would not like to be recorded or quoted in that documentation or post video sort of sessions. In the interest of active consent seeking, we will be removing any AI note-taking assistance during this call, and I will keep an eye out on the chat. So just be mindful that if you are associated with any AI note-taker, we will sort of be removing them from the room. To save bandwidth on the call, please do turn off your camera and keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking. But of course, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, feel free to turn on your video and unmute yourself to do so. Most of us here are fluent in Hindi or English, so feel free to ask your questions or make comments in either of those two languages. And if anyone does need help with translations, we'd be happy to step in. Please do use the chat box to leave your comments and questions, and try not to interrupt the speakers during their presentation, and try and hold on to your questions till the end. We have about 20 to 25 minutes for just a discussion and asking questions. But if you do have something pressing that you'd like to say as the presentation is going on, feel free to use the chat box, but also do introduce yourself and your organization along with it, so it's easy for the presenters to sort of contextualize your question. And of course, just reiterating that we'd like to keep the time because many of these sessions are parallelly programmed, but just a heads up, the program that was supposed to be at 12 has been rescheduled to the 7th of May. So we are okay to go a little bit over, but just be cognizant that I think other people might have other things to do. So we can try and push it as well, but let's just try to stick to the 1 hour mark. So just maybe quickly a little bit about CoreNet. The COVID-19 Research Network is an effort to build a community of practice to foster exchange and collaboration among research organizations, gathering information on issues relevant to COVID-19 pandemic in India. The CoreNet Secretariat is being anchored by Quicksand and is being supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And it's been about over a year since the community has come together. And since then, we have been able to have about 60 plus member organizations working across 23 geographies. We have more than 200 individual members on Slack who kind of exchange resources, chat with each other, collaborate over the Slack workspace. We have about 80 submitted research projects on the web platform, and feel free to check it out at www.corenet.in. I'll just leave that in the chat in case anyone wants to have a look. And thus far, we've hosted about 19 coffee hour sessions and 3 ethics dialogues, which are a space for the community members to come together and learn from each other, talk about interesting work that's going on, talk about possible collaborations. And we thought that maybe after a year of doing all this, the conference would be a good time to come to bring the community together and learn from a diverse set of stakeholders. And we think it comes at quite an appropriate time where we seem to be stepping into a more deadly second wave. So we thought that, okay, what have we actually learned over the last year? What are learnings we can take forward, especially as we move into a seemingly scarier point of time? Maybe just a quick look at the agenda. We're at the 5-minute introductions, after which I'll hand it over to Arishi and Vijay from Gramvani and Dwara Research for them to go over their presentation. And as promised, we have about 25 minutes for questions and discussions. But before I just kind of hand it over to them, I thought I'd make a quick introduction of the presenters today. Arishi is a research associate with the Social Protection Initiative at Dwara Research. Her focus area is last mile delivery of social protection and is currently studying exclusion and grievance redressal in welfare through various field programs. She is currently leading the team's work on exclusion and is currently statewide and is conducting statewide surveys in Andhra Pradesh, Assam, and Chhattisgarh involving multiple stakeholders from regional governments. Vijay, who is the CEO and co-founder of Gramvani, leads Gramvani's efforts to achieve sustainability and scale through strategic partnerships with the goal of achieving impact at scale. Vijay has over 13 years of experience in telecom and VAS in the VAS industry. And with that really quick introduction, I just hand it over to Arishi and Vijay to take the presentation forward. Thank you.
Very good morning, everybody. It's indeed a pleasure to be on this on this call, on this session, and to be doing the session with Dwara. Dwara Research, who we've had the privilege of working with over the past 9 months on this very, very important topic. Let me just take a couple of minutes, right? So let me just give you an example of one of the voices that were recorded on our platform by one of our users, who said that his family belonged to one of the most marginalized communities in the geography, and it was over 3 months that the PDS dealer had not given them ration, right? So the dealer kept procrastinating by giving reasons such as the machine not working, ration not arrived, and so on. So the issue became so grave that they were not able to get food for many days together. Similarly, there was an example of a young mother with two children, who could not, despite having submitted all the applications pertaining, to the midday meal scheme, could not get the food and did not get any sort of clarification on why she was not able to get the benefit, despite all efforts. Now, the question remains that many of these users, where do they reach out to? Where do they go? Where do they record their grievances? Where do they ask for help? At Gramani, we believe that to build empathetic societies, we truly need platforms that can help people not just get access to important contextual information, but they're also able to share their opinions, ask questions, record their grievances, listen to each other, and thus build, truly collaborative communities. And that is the role of, inclusive bottom-up media platforms. So Gramvani use technology to build such media platforms that people find both accessible and adaptable. And that is when we can really, and technology can be really useful and can really scale up only when people adopt it wholeheartedly. So Mobile Money is a voice-based participatory media platform. The way it is used is the users give a missed call to a number, they get a call back from the platform, they navigate the playlist of content channels that we create on various topics. They're able to not just listen to information, again, which is contextually seeded in the community's needs, but they are also able to participate, wherein they're able to ask questions, they're able to share their opinions, they're able to record their grievances, queries. Now, these recordings that happen on a platform, on the back end, we have a moderation team which moderates the content or the user-generated content on a continuous basis and ensures that it is published back on the platform. As part of the moderation process, they also do a lot of tagging, classification, cleaning up the content so that it becomes even more relevant and contextual to the target audience. The platform structure thus enables us to run, reporter-generated content, studio-generated content that are relevant to the community's needs. And based on the sort of information engagement, information, dissemination, people consume that content and they are also able to participate in it. We are able to gather a lot of feedback, a lot of insights from the platform, and these insights are what we use in collaboration with partners to really drive change on the ground, not just at an individual impact level, but also at a community and institutional or a policy level impact as well. The Mobile Money platform is available both on IVR for people who do not have access to smartphones or do not have access to internet and use a simple feature phone. Since I said all they have to do is just give a missed call. The service is also available on a smart app, right? So which is called the Mobile Money app. And the younger generation, the people who are now slowly migrating to the smartphone, can also use the app and the same audio interface as well. So Gramvani leverages this voice-based participatory media platform to build transparency and also accountability. The engagement feature or the participatory nature of the platform thus enables the opportunity to drive this transparency and accountability with the local authorities, with the institutions or organizations that engage with the target community. So the first aspect is as part of the theory of change, we believe that the first aspect is to create community awareness. When we are looking at, for example, the understanding on awareness or information on government schemes, as I said, users just dial a simple missed call number, the IVR number, they get a call back, they're able to navigate the playlist and access a dedicated set of information on government schemes and entitlements. There is also a process and an approach for the users to check their eligibility criteria on various government schemes. Once they are able to do that, they are able to recheck and also ensure that they know as to which of these government schemes are they eligible for and which of them can they participate in. The next part is once they come to know, once they're more informed about what benefits or entitlements they are eligible for, they can also seek help from a volunteer network on the ground, both our own Mobile Money volunteers across the various districts we operate in, but also a partner volunteer network, and understand as to where they need or where they can seek help from. So this is the first part of the theory of change, which is where we create community awareness. The next part is there might be, despite having the information, there might be a lot of questions or queries that the users might have. And in this particular aspect, the question and answer module or the question and answer capability of our platform, where we create a set of FAQs, we're able to provide that standard questions that people ask, and we're able to provide it for the community's benefit. There may be a lot of questions that might be coming from various community members. Once we have the responses, we also add them to the database of FAQs. So this was the conventional approach of how people would access the FAQs. They also could ask questions. We would offline take it with the experts, get those responses, and publish it back. And they would form part of these FAQs that people would navigate and understand the various aspects of the schemes, or the entitlement that they could apply for. What we've also done with the new innovation, wherein we built a voice-based Q&A module, wherein all that people have to do is just record their question, and based on the feature of converting the speech to text, we are able to check on the database of FAQs that we've got, and the most appropriate answer is played back to the user. So this automated FAQ retrieval service has also been launched currently with Grambani, and is available for partners to leverage as well. So this is also something that we've already developed. The next aspect is, once people start getting into the application process, into the entry and entry process of leveraging any of these schemes or benefits, there will be many situations where users will have faced a lot of grievances, as I mentioned a couple of cases in the beginning of the call. So people will use the same IVR channel as part of the grievance portal. They can record their grievances. Now these grievances are recorded, and at the back end, we've got a case management or a case handler system where these cases are mapped to specific volunteers of both either Mobile Bunny, depending on the geography, or partner network volunteers. And using the case manager, we're able to monitor as to the progress of not just us, but even the volunteers are able to monitor and track the progress of the particular case. And all such updates are made available to the user, because that's one very important aspect with regards to building trust for the user when he records a grievance on a particular platform. So this is an important feature or a benefit that's already available on the platform and has been used by Grambani. Now, Mobile Bunny during the last 1 year has been leveraging these features, these technologies to service, to repurpose many of our platforms to service our communities in the first phase of the pandemic, and we continue to do that going forward as well. So, so as part of the information building process, we've generated awareness of countering misinformation. We've captured community feedback. We provided relief and grievance redressal, self-assessment module. We worked with more than 30+ partners across various geographies, to provide support to our communities on the ground. We've also we've run many surveys on our platform to understand the sort of challenges and issues that people were facing on the ground, which were not just restricted to the health issues, but also with respect to many of the social or economic challenges that people were facing on account of the pandemic. Now, many of these grievances that were getting recorded on the platform, as I've mentioned, the way we would approach it is that when these grievances were recorded, we would work with the concerned, volunteers on the ground. The volunteers would then forward these grievances to the local stakeholders through WhatsApp or through IVR or through SMS, and be able to follow up with the concerned officials to ensure that these are escalated, to ensure these grievances are addressed. In geographies where we were not present in, we would work, that is where our partnerships were extremely valuable, and we were able to work with many of the partners whose own field networks were able to use the same approach of listening to these grievances and sharing them with the local authorities and escalating them to drive accountability and also transparency within the system. In most cases, the issues would be solved depending on the kind of issue, between 1 to 2 hours in emergency SOS calls, or between 1 to 2 days in case of more systemic involvement wherever applicable. So one of our core studies during the COVID pandemic was to understand the impact of the lockdown on various aspects of the community, right? So it was not just restricted to food access, right? As we understood from the more than 20,000+ voice reports that were generated on the platform, it was not just restricted to access to food. It was also with respect to, the access to the benefits or relief that the government was announcing, with respect to the financial challenges people are facing, or with respect to the NREGA, or with respect to the PDS related challenges, or entitlement access related issues that people are facing. And the slide that you see kind of summarizes the sort of impact on various aspects of of the community or people's lives that covered again as part of the SDG targets that people were impacted during the lockdown. And this report very strongly highlights those challenges, and we were able to understand much more deeply in terms of what aspects to address and where were these. And this is where it kind of drove us to make this effort along with Dwara to understand what are these specific exclusion points, right? So so this is kind of that pivot in some ways. So yeah, I think I will hand it over to Arushi at this point. As I said, it was indeed a privilege working with Dwara Research. This was in response to the Azim Premji University's research funding program, and we worked with them in terms of to understand these exclusion frameworks. And we had a host of other partners like the University of Montreal, Dr. Meera Jory and team, Tika Vani team, and the entire Grambani team. Arshi, I'll request you to kindly take over.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that comprehensive overview of the Grambani model. Over the last year, we've immensely benefited from our collaboration with the organization. And it's really helped us understand the modalities of welfare delivery in the last mile. We can go to the next slide. I can start with a quick project overview, take everyone through the key research components of what we did with Grambani over the last 1 year. Starting with, so we had 3 key components. We started with analysis of the citizen-generated content on the IVR platform, which I just described. Sorry, yeah. What we had was around 10 to 20,000 calls that our research team sifted through. So there were a lot of general distress SOS calls, but there were a lot of welfare-specific, scheme-specific calls that we tapped into and try to understand the challenges of people who are dialing in, reporting their grievances faced, right? So at the end of our sampling strategy, we made sure that we represented all schemes, which I will come to later. But all in all, we had a total of approximately 1,000 citizen complaints that we analyzed between March and November 2020. Apologies for the typo there. Secondly, we also conducted a set of deep dive case studies where we, through a very critical case sampling methodology, we selected citizens who we wanted to have an interview with and really understand why their cash transfers had failed, or for instance, they were unable to collect ration at the fair price shop, especially in the wake of the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, which was, as you know, a relief package announced by the finance minister on 26 March 2020, right after the lockdown announcement. The second key component related to understanding how Grambani has been helping citizens achieve grievance redress, right? And what you see is all of it, most of it actually happens outside of the official grievance redress systems. So it helped us understand as to the reasons why people are hesitant or not approaching official grievance redress mechanisms. Is it because there is a sheer paucity of official mechanisms, or is it that there is a lack of trust or a very lack of feeling of empowerment, right? The next, and again, under this, what we tried to do, the research design typically involved interviewing Grambani volunteers. We also created a decision tree where we took them through and asked them that in case a citizen raises a particular grievance, how do you help them achieve resolution? Secondly, we also conducted interviews with government functionaries, mostly those who are involved in the last mile, and that includes panchayat officials, that includes your market officer, your supply officer when it comes to PDS. We also tried to interview a couple of banking correspondents who were very much involved in the last mile delivery of cash transfers. Lastly, specifically because it was an action research, we designed a set of standard operating procedures that can be used by other civil service or civil society organizations who are involved in the same work, helping citizens interact with the government machinery, so to say. So broadly, the states we covered are Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Bihar, and UP. For the northern states, you'll see we've covered all of the cash transfer schemes and PDS. For Tamil Nadu specifically, we were skewed towards the transfers that the state welfare board had announced for informal sector workers who were registered under respective welfare boards, including the building and construction workers board. Secondly, we had a lot of calls around Employees Provident Fund from Tamil Nadu as well. So what we did was we combined Grambani's IVR data of citizens' complaints with the exclusion framework Dwara had developed to understand challenges. Right? And what you see in front of you is nothing but a process description of how a cash transfer scheme, quite typically a direct benefit transfer, is implemented, right? We start with the first process, which is simply identifying who is eligible to get that cash transfer. This is followed by a beneficiary registration process, which mostly entails providing proof of eligibility, right? So you have to submit your birth certificates. In case of PM Kisan, you have to submit your land patta document. In case of getting a ration card, you have to submit your below poverty line card, right? So those were the enrollment procedures we looked at. This is followed by back-end processing, which is a very specific proceduralized process by the DBT mission, where they've laid out an SOP how funds are released from the Consolidated Fund of India right down to citizens' accounts. Yeah? And we try to map the various reasons why payments might fail in that particular back-end process. This is followed with the cash withdrawal stage, where assuming the citizen was successfully identified, has successfully enrolled under the program, and has received money in their account, were they able to withdraw successfully? Right? And as you all know, during the lockdown, there were major restrictions on not just mobility, but even when you managed to reach a cash out point, we saw a lot of issues related to overcrowding or simply staff not cooperating. Right. So using the previous framework, exclusion framework, we've tried to expand it not just for specific DBT schemes, as you see, like PM Kisan, Ujjwala, the ex gratia transfers announced for women account holders of Jan Dhan, but we also developed specific frameworks for MGNREGA, PDS, and EPF. And we developed specific exclusion frameworks because of the idiosyncratic nature of these schemes, right? So for instance, MGNREGA has specific provisions for work allocation, wage payment processing, right? Similarly for PDS, where you have, when it comes to back-end processing, you have the whole ambit of issues related to supply chain and how grains are transferred from the Food Corporation of India to the go-downs and right down to the individual fair price shops. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to focus only on the MGNREGA scheme today. And what I'll do is I'll take you through the key exclusionary factors found in each process. What you'll see before you is pre-entry, entry, benefit processing, and endpoint. When we start with pre-entry, we basically mean being identified as eligible for the scheme. In case of MGNREGA, this particular process doesn't really feature because MGNREGA is a self-registration, self-identification. You can simply, anybody who's above the age of 18 can walk up to the local panchayat and demand work under the employment guarantee program. Right? So keeping pre-entry aside, we start with our first process of entering into MGNREGA, which is the job card application processing stage. And here, what you will see in front of you is a transcribed and, of course, translated version of the complaint Gram Bani had received on its IVR platform, where it says that I'm a migrant worker. I returned to my home village in May, which is right after the lockdown. The Lekpal, which is the village registrar, so to say, who's part of the revenue department, and the Pradhan, which is the village head, they both took my Aadhaar and bank details saying that my job card will be made, but that did not happen. And we've seen several cases such as this, and it has really widespread implications because MGNREGA throughout 2020 has been touted or hailed as the safety net for migrant workers returning back to their village amidst the lockdown. And even now, if you see, a lot of media reports continue hailing MGNREGA as the safety net that needs to be expanded. But even before we start counting it as the safety net, there are numerous issues that have to be addressed, starting with that even when people are submitting their job card application, there are atypical bureaucratic delays. People are completely denied submitting. So even if I submit my job card application, there's no guarantee that it will be processed, right? And lastly, what we see is there is some discretionary denial. So we did come across a couple of cases. Although MGNREGA does not have any age limits, a lot of panchayat officials were seen to discriminate either based on age or any other socioeconomic factor. Coming to the benefit processing stage of MGNREGA, it's a two-forked approach that we took. We separately analyzed the issues related to work allocation and the issues related to wage payment processing. So work allocation consists of issues wherein you have a job card, but either you're unable to raise demand for work, and even if you've raised demand for work, you're not allotted work. Even if you're allotted work, there are cases where you might not get work for the number of days you've demanded it for. When it comes to wage payment processing issues, we see that mostly issues relate to simply non-payment of wages, followed by a typical delay in the processing. Sometimes even when people receive wages, they are inadequate or they're below the mandated state level MGNREGA wage rate. Yeah, and what you see in front of you is an example of work allocation where the person says that I have a job card, I don't get work under MNREGA. And they've told me to, the Gram Rozgar Sevak, which is the key access point, localized access point, who's responsible for allocating work and maintaining the MIS, has simply not been very responsive. So wage payment processing, a lot of issues overlap with the issues we've seen in direct benefit transfers as well. And these can start with data entry errors, sheer lack of linkage between the worker's Aadhaar card and their bank account, errors in bank account details, any NPCI mapper issue. So the National Payment Corporation of India maintains a repository of Aadhaar cards and bank account numbers. And if there isn't any error, all payments fail that are transferred through the DBT system, right? And here we recently covered a case study in Jalalabad, Uttar Pradesh, where a woman who worked for almost 20 days on digging a pond site had not received wages for months. And when Gramvani volunteers investigated the issue, they realized that she was not the only one facing wage payment delays. The entire village, the fund transfer order file for the entire village had been pending at the block development officer because Aadhaar linkage with their bank accounts had not been done at the back end, and that's typically done by the computer operator who sits at these block level offices, right? So it's a typical it's a typology of issues that we've seen repeated over time across teams. Coming to the cash out modalities, and here we cover issues related to availability of access points, followed by operational issues even when accessible, followed by overcharging or any other kind of non-compliance activities that might take place, right? So what we saw that the issue of availability of access points got exacerbated during the lockdown, where people had issues reaching the cash out points because of unavailability of public transport, and we do not see a lot of penetration of banking correspondence. Second is operational issues. These are typical network failures that occur or biometric failures, specifically when your POS device or your payment point of sale device is not working properly. Lastly, there were issues related to overcharging and any other non-compliance. We did see a couple of issues related to embezzlement of MGNREGA wages on the part of the banking entity, including the banking correspondent or the manager at the bank branch. So this was one part of the project where we looked at exclusion. The other part of the project tried to focus on how Gramvani volunteers were helping people resolve these issues, right? So what we did, we undertook a very typical coding exercise where we categorized the resolution pathways under 4 broad heads. We start with A0, which is action 0, which is information provision. So in a lot of cases, when Gramvani volunteers realize the person is capable enough of navigating some of these digitized interfaces, all they do is teach them the modalities of how to navigate the administrative machinery. And that includes teaching them how to file, let's say, written complaints under NREGA. So all of that we categorize under A0. This is followed by a resolution pathway that is predominant across most schemes. And this is the action item that's employed by most volunteers, is issue escalation. And I'll come to the conditions in which issue escalation has been employed across teams. This is followed by A2A. Now, A2A is direct intervention on behalf of the citizens. So what the volunteers do is that, so let's say if MGNREGA has a provision that you can file a complaint at your local Gram Rozgar Sevak, but in a written format, for a lot of people who are unable to write applications, and simply lack traditional literacy, Gramvani volunteers write applications on their behalf, right? So we categorize that as direct intervention. The other very interesting category is A to B, which we call as informal negotiation. So in a lot of circumstances, without issue escalation, what volunteers do is they simply approach the access point concern, right? So in case of discretionary denial under public distribution system, we see that the volunteers go to the fair price shop officer and try to negotiate with them, really make a case for the family that they are facing a lot of food insecurity and we need to release ration to them. Similarly, we saw this informal negotiation coming up in terms of the banking correspondents who were not cooperating with the villagers, where we saw Gramvani volunteers speaking with them and also giving that sort of warning of issue escalation, that in case you fail to cooperate, we will raise the issue to your banking supervisor or let's say to the lead district committee. Right? What you see is a very basic flow chart of how resolution pathways work, and this is specifically for MGNREGA. In the interest of time, I'll quickly take you through it. So once the citizen complaint is received by the Gramvani platform, the volunteer typically has all of these options, right? Information provision, issue escalation, direct intervention, or informal negotiation. And it really depends on the type of issues. So for instance, if a person comes in with enrollment issues, and what you see is if these are issues related to, job card and verbal requests have been given for job cards, what volunteers do is simply A2A, which is direct intervention. They write a written application for a job card on their behalf. And in some cases, they simply provide them the correct modalities of how to go about getting their job card. For other kinds of issues under job card, which basically include that there is a typical bureaucratic delay, we see that there is A2B, which is informal negotiation with the panchayat officials. And in case that fails, you go to A1, which is issue escalation, typically at the BDO level for MGNREGA. When it comes to work allocation issues, we see that there is A1, which is issue escalation, is not very predominant when it comes to work allocation. It's used only in very grave issues. So we saw that in a couple of cases, machines were being used instead of manual labor at a lot of MGNREGA sites. And this kind of a non-compliance was quickly escalated to the BDO, who is the appropriate person to sort of take up that issue. And in case of other issues that are not as grave as that, we see that there is a simple A2A or a direct intervention on behalf where what you see in work allocation, a lot of workers verbally raise demand, right? And when they verbally raise demand, there is no documentation of that demand. So it leads to two things, right? A, it complicates the process of grievance redressal because there's no proof that you've actually raised demand and you were not allocated work. The second issue is that you were denied unemployment allowance as well. So in all of the cases we went through, most people were not aware of the unemployment allowance provision under MGNREGA. And second, even if they were, they never pursued it, right? Simply for the lack of interest, lack of trust in the system. The last set of issues related to payment processing in cash out, what you see in payment processing, the local government functionaries in MGNREGA do not have a lot of functional capacity. And this is mostly out of fear of misappropriation of funds, that they do not have a lot of authority over passing FTOs. What they do from their end is they document the work and they push the FTO towards the BDO, who is then responsible to release the payment. So when what we see for payment processing, most issues are escalated to the BDO office. So what you saw for MGNREGA, we've done that for around 7 other schemes, including PM Kisan, which has been a very interesting case to study. But just to summarize how resolution pathways feature and what kind of patterns we unearthed, we start with issue escalation, and we see that issue escalation happens mostly in those cases when the delivery mechanism is very top-down, right? When local government functionaries do not have any capacity, you simply go to higher tiers of scheme administration. And even in schemes with decentralized implementation mechanism, and this is specifically for PDS as well, we see issue escalation happening for cases where there is poor monitoring of local officials. So either they're not cooperating or they're indulging in anything that's not compliant. Right? This is followed by another reason for A1 or issue escalation, that there is inadequacy or the grievance redressal in place are very cumbersome to navigate. They're very complicated, or most people, when they file complaints, they are faced with a sheer non-response, right? So in this case, the volunteers simply circumvent the official procedures and escalate the issue. Issue escalation is simply also used in cases where other action pathways have proven to be unsuccessful. Coming to A2A, which is resolution and citizen behalf, it has been a good proxy for us that wherever we saw a predominance of A2A or resolution on citizen behalf, we found that the scheme always has some front-end mechanisms for complaint filing, like MGNREGA, where you have inbuilt provisions to log into MGNREGA website, file your complaint, etc. Similarly for PM Kisan, which has a dedicated farmers portal, allowing people to enter their Aadhaar details and simply correcting the data entry errors therein, hence releasing their payments. The interaction with access points quite diametrically opposite, right? So wherever there is a predominance of A2B, we know that there aren't enough official mechanisms, and volunteers and citizens have had to employ a lot of informal negotiation, right? The last bit on information provision, that really speaks to the demand side of the problem, I would say, where it's used when the volunteers gauge that the citizen can pursue resolution on their own, right? There are no issues related to mobility or lack of familiarity with digitized interfaces. It's only then when volunteers resort to A0. So here I would like to hand over back to Vijay for just charting out the way forward and a call for action that we would like to put out.
Thank you so much, Arushi. That was wonderful. So I guess Arushi's done a fantastic job in terms of actually summarizing the insights and the learnings from this extremely important project. And while we've of course made some very clear recommendations in the report, based on this project and the learnings we've had from the ground and across the community platforms we work with. I think the objective of this session is also to really make a plea, make a call out, right, to the stakeholders, to all the partners out there, and to people, wonderful people listening to this session in terms of how do we take it forward, right? So we've got great learnings, we've got great insights, we made certain recommendations, but how do we really take it forward? How do we really action it, right? So I think we're trying to share some important points and would like to see really solicit the support and participation of various stakeholders in this journey going forward. The first part, as I said, while we've mentioned even as part of our recommendations that a lot of the issues, again, she mentioned the point saying that a lot of the issues can be addressed, or a lot of the grievances can be addressed by the community members, but there's a lack of awareness, right? So there's a lack of understanding of these schemes, the process for grievance redressal. And most times when that basic awareness is provided, they are able to navigate the system. But how do we do that, right? So this is where we are really soliciting organizations, partnerships across the country to really set up more mobile money networks, the community-based media platforms. We've done that in partnership with many organizations in the previous phase. We continue to do so and would really invite more organizations and partners across the country to set up mobile money networks, not just for community awareness, also provide people, a platform that can give people give feedback on the various, schemes, benefits, entitlements, government programs, etc., and in a contextualized manner in the vernacular language. Also provide them with an opportunity and a channel through which they can record their grievances in voice without having to navigate through internet-based complex systems, and also building agency of many of these communities we work with. So that's the first part. The second part is, as I said, the platform is a participatory media platform. That's the biggest benefit, where we are able to get voices from the ground. We are able to get the users to record their grievances, record their issues in their own voice, right? There couldn't be a better or a bigger evidence of the sort of problems that people are facing. And that is the mission of Grambani, where we are trying to reverse the flow of information. So these platforms, the network of community media platforms we set up, will capture these user voices. So the plan is to collate these voice reports, the feedback and the grievances from these various community media instances across thematic areas, be it health, governance, gender, livelihood, economic aspects, agriculture, any of these topics, right? So capturing these voices. Now we have the platforms, we have the voices from the ground, we have the broad understanding of the sort of exclusion frameworks, the issues that people are facing. And this is where we are also propagating the role of creating some sort of a complaints repository, right, powered by these community media platforms, and it happens on a regular basis, right? We would really like to create a working group to be able to lead this this complaints repository, to support collective advocacy on a thematic basis, and work on specific scheme level recommendations for reaching the last mile, and also help resolve, or rather strengthen, the grievance redressal mechanisms on the ground. We would also like to really run collective campaigns like the Not Status Quo campaign that we ran during the first phase last year, where we were kind of pushing for institutionalizing many of the short-term measures that were used to address issues pertaining to PDS, DPT, Manrega, and said that, okay, how can we really push this and make it more structured mechanism rather than short-term interventions, right? So the objective is, based on this complaint repository, based on the thematic understanding of the sort of challenges, use it for collective advocacy and to run collective campaigns on an ongoing basis to drive both that transparency and also accountability. The use of voice technologies in this whole process can be extremely valuable. One aspect is allowing people to record these, to record their grievances, issues, and participate in the grievance redressal or the service access process. The other aspect is also be regularly informed about the progress of any of the grievances that they're recording on the platform. And tools like text-to-speech technology, which is already available, can really help. For example, we will show on the final slide, where we're trying to see as to many of the records that get published on any of these interfaces can be converted to voice or speech, and hence can be used to inform these the users or the beneficiaries on the status of their grievances, right? So this is an important part or an aspect to build trust and also continuity and engagement with the process for the platforms. So we already have all those technologies available, and it is about leveraging those technologies to really empower and inform and ensure more participation from. And most importantly, as I've said, I've already given a couple of examples of how using voice bots, the voice-based Q&A technologies, we can really use these technologies to really drive better content discovery pertaining to any of these schemes and benefits without having to navigate complex technology systems. Use these systems to drive more contextual and more specific, user-specific, inputs from the ground. Like for example, the surveys that we are able to run. Conventionally, we would run the standard DTMF-based static surveys, but using the automated, the voice bot technology, we are able to contextualize, and based on user-specific inputs, we are able to, launch a much wider ambit for the survey objectives as well. So we have these technologies, and we would really like to leverage these technologies for the partnerships that we build going forward. So these are some of the thoughts, and really a call to all the partners, to all the stakeholders, to the August gathering for the session. And we would really invite more conversations on this particular topic, and to be able to build partnerships so that we can take this forward to a logical step and to really drive action on the ground. So, so this is just an idea. This is just a thought in terms of the mock-up of the central complaints repository that we would really like to build. We would of course make it more comprehensive with these inputs and working with other stakeholders. The last image that we show is how the records on any of these portals can be converted to audio formats and can help the users with respect to listening to the status of their the grievances or the issues that they have recorded on the platform. So this is just to show how we are trying to visualize some of these steps that we've mentioned in the earlier slide. So once again, as I said, we've made the recommendations. We are trying to really chart a way forward. We would really solicit and request participation of more organizations and partners, and try and expand the network of bottom-up grassroots level community media platforms so that we can reach out to more communities, more marginalized and underserved communities, and drive more voices from the ground that can lead to collective advocacy and to really make up a long-term sustainable policy level impact or interventions that we can together do. So thank you very much once again. Again, it's been a pleasure being on the session and sharing our thoughts and learnings from this particular initiative or intervention with Dwara Research. We would also like to thank Azim Premji University and all the Tika Vani team, and also University of Montreal, and the entire Gramvani team. Dwara Research team has been fantastic, and we really would like to expand the network of partnerships for this initiative. And thank you once again to the coordinate team as well for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Vijay and Arushi, for that extremely interesting and comprehensive breakdown of your project. I see, Arushi, that you have responded to a few questions in the chat, but maybe since we have about 5 to 10 minutes, we could just see if there are any more questions, or if anyone wants to respond to something that was said in the chat. Feel free to sort of turn on your video, unmute yourself, and make your comments.
Hi, this is Priya. No, first I just wanted to, I don't have like any major question. I just want to congratulate. So such a fabulous joint endeavor. Really, my internet is unstable. But I just want to congratulate both of you, all of you. This is great. My one question to Arushi, it's kind of in the chat, Arushi, is that, we need to break down corruption in the system systematically and call it out as a leakage rather than exclusion error. There's a difference between that and exclusion error, and I would urge you to start labeling it or thinking about that. I know you talked about it in the next slide, but so that's my only one comment. And the second is, I really like your last slide where you kind of put these different ways in which local advocacy can happen. What I would want to know is link it with what Vijay presented and Gramvani is doing. That are these the ways in which actually efforts are happening, and which ones of these actually, so conceptually it made a lot of sense, but practically what is working on the ground is what I'd like to know. So how do we link the voices of people and their questions to that conceptual framework on local advocacy? So these were the two kind of ideas. Thanks.
Right, like great points. I think just on the first bit around leakages and inclusion errors and corruption, etc. What we saw when we were drafting the exclusion framework is that most of the literature characterized leakages as inclusion errors, and nobody really looked at the kind of people who were being excluded because of those factors, and hence that deliberate attempt to also categorize that leakage as an exclusionary factor in itself. But I do have a point, and I think when we go forward with the exclusion framework, there is a lot of nuance to be brought on in the coming months, including a very key focus on gender and how specific categories within the population cohort are excluded, and their exclusionary factors really differ from the gender. So definitely I'll include that in that second reiteration. And the other point around linking the conceptual framework with the what's really happening on the ground, how we even come up with the A0 to A to B categories was simply based on looking at what's happening in the ground. So what you see is the conceptualization has been based on actions that are happening on the ground by volunteers, and we interviewed each volunteer, took them through our entire exclusion framework, and gave them a typology of issues and asked them, okay, tell us, how do you on the ground go about solving these issues? I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Priya. Thank you so much for the warm wishes. So absolutely, I think one of the points that I'd like to mention, just to add to what Rishi said with regards to corruption, that's a point, that I've always wondered whether does corruption discriminate, right? So is it about who is asking, or is it about who is asked, right? So I think that's where I've always wondered whether is it more to do with respect to who is asking than who is asked? Does it really discriminate, right? Or is it more of a broader issue, or is it more of an exclusion of a specific set of people, right? And on what basis are they really discriminated on, if they are, right? So I think that's a very important point that you've highlighted, and I think it will be important to really call that out as a very, very large and a specific issue that's impacting the segment on the whole, right? So rather than just looking at it as an exclusion error. So very valid point. Thank you so much on that.
Great. Thank you, Priya, for your comments and questions. And thank you, Arushi and Vijay, for all your time and being very patient, as well as answering them in the chat box. Yeah, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone who joined as well. And of course, to Vijay and Arushi. We do have a few more dialogues and sessions going on, which will start at 12 p.m. As I mentioned, a few sessions have been rescheduled given unforeseen circumstances to the 7th of May. So make sure you kind of keep yourself abreast with the new schedule, which was updated on Sched. And I just request one of my colleagues to just put in the link in the chat box. If you want more details about CoreNet, I had already shared previously the web platform link, and you can also follow us on Twitter at CoreNet_India. And of course, if you'd like to kind of have a deeper conversation about what the community means, how you can be involved, feel free to reach out to us at hello@corenet.in. And with that, I'd like to conclude the session. And thank you, everyone, and stay safe.